Welcome everybody to the third day of the CZI annual conference. It's been a whirlwind and it's been exciting. And this one, was day 3 and it's the Entrepreneurship Ecosystem Forum. And we've got the right people to actually talk about this. We've got Tino, friend of the show, and he's now the CEO of the National Venture Capital Company of Zimbabwe.
But we're changing it to the National Venture Fund.
Okay. Keeps on changing. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
But going back to your roots as an asset manager.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we've got somebody who actually we've got the right person to talk about the entrepreneurship ecosystem and what venture capitalism actually can do in Zimbabwe. But we also have our host, and that's Sekai. Thank you very much for joining us, Sekai.
Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe we can stop there. It's been a good 3 days. What's your assessment?
I think it's been absolutely valuable, and I think I'll start on a lighter note highlight that the show has been a good part of the program, because we did have one professor travel from Bulawayo because he had watched the show the previous night and he got on a flight to come and attend a very important part of the session on strategic foresight.
So we're a good influence.
Yes, we are. Good influence at all. But on a more serious note, I think that on sustainability, we are seeing very good outcomes from the program this year. Of course, our BES, the Business Environment and Society Compendium, the Directory Initiative, the incubation. Sustainability incubation for professionals and for companies that is coming out of here, which is also one of the key outcomes. It has shaped up quite nicely. And all the areas of the program, if you notice, are actually policy frontiers of today and of the future for business. So as we begin these engagements amongst ourselves as business, we are providing the leadership as private sector. When we say private sector-led policy innovation or policy, we are not really talking about just having a chair at the table to discuss policy, but we are talking about providing leadership in terms of knowledge leadership to the market and to try and provide input to government. On strategic foresight, again, we are seeing that the outcome is really a community of leaders that are beginning to think about how to apply that to business as well as to policy. And on entrepreneurship, clearly the forum is shaping up. The initiative is taking very good shape, and we've got a lot of actionable items going forward.
So this is the collaboration between yourself as CZI and
the National Venture Capital Fund.
Okay, all right. Would you like to actually talk about that?
I think Sekai pretty much covered it. It was quite interesting. I think we had the right people in the room. They're still downstairs for the second session. Mm-hmm. And what I discovered is that we have a lot more in common and a whole lot of need for us to come together. And from industry to tell both government and tertiary institutions what their need is, and move away from coming up with ideas that have no direction per se and are just there to win competitions, and you move that to a situation where we are now feeding into industry and assisting industry to have solutions. And we are now starting to slowly see, and Sekai, correct me if I'm wrong, we're beginning to see more of a policy framing up, and I see hopefully in the next year or so that we have a startup act of some sort, and with the various incentives, but it's shaping up very nicely, and I think everybody's on board.
Okay.
I think that's what
let's back up a little, and please explain to us what a venture capital fund is.
Oh, okay. So I'll explain what ours is, because ours is quite an interesting one. We are government owned, 100% by the Ministry of Finance. So our job is to obviously find those unicorns and those businesses that would not get support with us because there's no collateral or they don't have a backer. So you'd find the majority of these type of businesses would be coming out of incubation hubs where the idea has been proven and it just needs that kicker to grow. So we're an equity partner. So we come in, take an equity stake, sit in there for about 3 to 7 years on average, and then we exit either by listing, management buyback, or an outright sale of the shares. So we are your growth partner, to say. But because we're government led, we obviously now have to align ourselves with the bigger picture, the growth towards NDS2 and the end of that. So we look at solutions that affect the country, that affect communities, and that grow industries in the direction the government wants them to go.
Fantastic. And for Sekai, why is this important for you? And why is this collaboration important?
So this collaboration is important because, as you have seen, we do have an active ecosystem in the country, but it is fragmented. And that fragmentation means that in some instances, you have the same entrepreneurs probably getting the same kind of support from different providers who are doing exactly the same thing. And what we are providing here is an institutional pathway to try and create the institutional infrastructure that allows for collaboration and synergies across all the actors in the ecosystem, so that the innovation hubs can pass on to the most relevant institution, which could be an incubator, and also the incubator can pass on to an accelerator, and you do have now an active ecosystem. But at the moment, every ecosystem actor is going direct into the raw market, where people need different things, but an incubator is going to recruit entrepreneurs direct from scratch. And a financier is trying to do the same. Everyone is going to be exactly to the same. So we are trying to create the institutional framework to have the synergies that are needed to bring an ecosystem to effect, because an ecosystem has to be deliberately connected and interlinked. We are also trying to write a policy through practice, where a co-creation process of the collaboration between these actors must now emerge into a policy. And we've got technical assistance from Dr. Sibanda, Baiken, and of course our elder, Dr. Mungai, to shepherd us into actually shaping the forum that is going to coordinate the different actors. Private sector has done a great job in jumping into the challenge and beginning to do what they can do. Universities have done what they can do, and they continue to do that. And now we need all this to come together. And we've got government in the form of the National Venture Fund, and we've got private sector in the form of ourselves. We will then be able to co-manage or coordinate the actors into an institutional framework that will take us forward.
Okay. Shuba, your comment is, we need you to comment on this, because you're a capital market player and you've seen the constraint, especially even with the big organizations. And here we're talking about startups and we're talking about venture capital. Is there going to be the necessary throughput? Do you see this as a necessary venture, especially when we see the bottlenecks at the capital market level?
Look, I think it makes sense to actually invest in venture. If you zoom out and you look at what's happening on the global stage, and you ask the question, where was the most wealth created in the last 10, 20, 50 years? It's startups that became these huge, successful multinational behemoths. And so, when you think about capital markets in Zimbabwe, and you ask the question, who are the greatest entrepreneurs? It's Strive and the Zed and Mike Fowler who started InScore, and those are the two outstanding ones. And over the last 25, 30 years, there hasn't really been a great deal of entrepreneurial energy building great businesses from scratch. And perhaps part of the challenge is that they just don't, the support is just not there. So I think it's a great idea to actually create a fund that is working with these companies and entrepreneurs in the infancy, because even if 8 or 9 out of every 10 fail miserably, that one that becomes the next Econet, the next InScore, is worth all the trouble and energy.
Okay, maybe Tinu, you can help us here.
Sure.
Because I certainly see a lot of bottlenecks as far as the capital markets are concerned.
Yeah.
And there are lots of businesses that should be listed, but they haven't. We haven't seen any new listings, primarily because the incentive is just not there.
Yeah.
And you're funding these startups, and as Rufara said, and I quite like that, you fund them as startups and they grow, but ideally they should be able to go into the capital markets and raise money and make a bit of money for themselves, but we're not seeing that.
Yeah. So as Rufara would definitely know this, our market isn't deep, right? If you look at even the options of where to place money, let's look at a pension fund. It's either they're in equities, which are not really doing that great right now, or they look at money market instruments, or they're putting their money into buildings or all these flats that we're seeing going around, right? So other from that, there aren't many options. So I think that's the first sign that our capital markets are shallow. And then secondly, we've got the cost of money, which is ridiculously high in this country. And that's maybe due to supply and demand. And also there's a perceived country risk. So there's a premium on money. I mean, the lowest you get as a blue chip probably is 12% on average, unless you're Delta, maybe you might squeeze that to a 10. But on average, people are getting money between 15 and 20%. Let's be real. So the cost of capital, plus there's no collateral from these entrepreneurs and startups. So there's a huge gap. So they can't go to the traditional places to go get capital. So that's the area that we're trying to fill up and say, okay, we're these guys, we've come as government. This is the government kitty that we're putting towards that sector, that gap. Can we have industry play their part? So industry doesn't even really have to come on board in terms with finances. Industry can come on board to say, we'll be an off-taker. We need this solution. And I'll give an example. One of the ERPs which we've developed, we've invested in that business, is an input substitution, because they take Zig, they have a better module than most ERPs, and these are kids here in Zim. They just needed someone to support them. So you've got that area that you can play in, and which we're quite excited to be in. Yeah.
Oh, that's
I also want to add that I think maybe the complementarity is that what this does is that it creates a pipeline for whatever funding may be available. But because of the current structure of the ecosystem, you don't really have the throughput that you need, because you want whoever is putting money in the startups to have some level of confidence that they are putting their money into a well-supported venture that is likely to achieve what it ought to achieve. What we've also observed is that in some instances where money is actually chasing some entrepreneurs, it does have to come from the institutions that are extending the funding. It has to come with the back-end support, to actually manage them and assist them. So a financier doesn't want to go through that. They want to extend funding, but the ecosystem must give them a candidate that is well prepared by the ecosystem itself, so that they are a more viable venture partner for them.
So, Sekai, I was actually going to ask you a much harder question.
Oh my goodness.
Because, so we're talking about startups and entrepreneurship, and you represent big business. Don't you see a contradiction there? And especially because a lot of the startups are actually in the informal sector, and the people that you ordinarily represent are in the formal business, and they're fighting the informal sector.
I actually disagree with you, because the formal business is not fighting informal businesses. What formal businesses are fighting is that we are asking for a level playing field. We are asking for an elimination of distortions in the market that incentivize informal and maybe illegal business and economic activity. So I think that's a different angle. But is there a contradiction between supporting startups and SMEs? Absolutely no. If you look at some of the existing businesses, they themselves are participating in supporting startups. If you look at the participation of Delta Beverages in Nectar's post-fellowship and all the entrepreneurship development activities, you can see that it makes sense to grow an economy, because when you grow an economy, you grow that market. So it's in the interest of big business to support startups and SMEs, because they make their part and parcel of the economy and the market in which they operate, and their impact on growing the economy also extends to them. So clearly, I don't think there's a contradiction there, and the private sector is heavily involved in supporting some of these startups.
Yeah, well, then I'll double click on what she said and point out that globally, the lifespan of companies is actually shrinking because of the level of innovation and dynamic forces and disruption, right? So you have these new companies that come through and build new products, change an industry or market, and the incumbents die. So if you are an institution like CZI, which has all these well-established businesses that have been there for a long time, and you don't have a pipeline of new companies coming through, well, what that means is over time, you're going to shrink and become irrelevant.
And just to add on to that, when we support companies, even the students, we support them even through them registering proper companies with ZIMRA, with NASA. And so we're not just giving them the financial backing, we're also assisting them in setting that up, mentoring them in that, keeping records, having a track record, so that when we do get bigger funding, or when we want to exit, everything, the track record is there. And then, hopefully as they grow, we hand them over to Sekai as well. Okay. And they become part of CZI.
Okay, well answered. So Tina, I want to put you on the spot. Because you've actually been in the private sector and now you're on the other side. If you had to change regulation, especially for startups and for a lot of the guys who are actually in the informal sector, what would you change?
So that's the conversation we're having today. We have our ideas as an institution. We want some sort of a tax incentive. We would like some sort of a tax-free holiday or tax-reduced holiday for startups, and create that environment.
But it's not like your startups are paying any tax.
The question is incentives, right? So if we then have the incentives in place, then we can have your NASAs, your PSCs, your pension funds also start investing in that, and give them also prescribed asset status of some sort, so that you have, so there's a tax incentive on the one side, and then we can have also leniency on compliance on certain things, so it makes it easier for a business to operate as a startup.
Okay, and how far have you gone with that? Because it's a good, worthwhile initiative.
We're still early stages. I think this discussion that we're having here today will form the forum that's going to drive that. So we're going to have a thematic meeting and have everyone's voice come to it, because it can't just be from the National Venture Fund. It has to be all players within the ecosystem. So hopefully we're going to get to some point. We've had a discussion with the Minister of Finance. We've had a discussion with IPEC, just initially, just to see whether it's something they would entertain, and they're both open to the idea. But now we need an industry voice that comes through, and everyone gets to put in their 2 cents, whether it's Takura Capital that's been there before, Mangwana, or the new guys on the block, or the innovation hubs and so forth. You have to allow everyone to speak and tell us what the problem is, because we're new. So maybe these guys have been in operation for for longer than us. They have more experience. So we want to learn from them and hear from them.
So it means that Sekai, whenever you're talking to government, and especially in policy formulation, it's not just big business that you're representing. You will now represent the startups as well.
Yes, I'm sure you would have heard from over the past 2 years, we have started actually age aggregating companies that we work with, and particularly for manufacturing, I think we've got about 50% that are less than 20 years. We are looking at 0 to 5 years, and we are trying now to look at what are some of the peculiar challenges that are found in early stage, in some of the early stage companies. But what we realize is that our regulatory environment is size agnostic, so it doesn't care whether you are a small entity or you're a large entity, or you're a startup or you were started 20 years ago. And this is some of the work that we are currently doing. We've got a round of an analysis that's going on across the country right now, which we've called the ideal policy environment for SMEs, which is really modeling what an ideal environment would look like in terms of regulations, looking at different sort of size startups, and what regulatory environment would not choke them to death or would not stunt their growth, as it were, and then make these propositions to government. We are also looking at a sandbox approach to look at a regulatory sandbox so that we can have a longitudinal approach to a certain cohort of SMEs. Can we actually incubate regulatory incubation rather than regulate, so that we are able to understand what it takes for startups to get to regulatory compliance, instead of demanding that right in the beginning. So that pathway is part of the policy input that we are looking to make. But also, I think what is also really important is to recognize that compliance capital is rarely funded. So it's very significant capital for a lot of our startups, and that compliance capital, if I was exempted from having to invest 10, 15 or $20,000 annually into compliance, and use that into actually investing in the business itself, while I'm incubated on regulatory compliance, where you have technical assistance and supervision from government in terms of whether you're working towards compliance, because it's not to say that we are saying you are exempted from compliance. You are just exempted from capitalizing it in the first few years of running your business, to allow you headroom for growth. Because like Tino has said, if you look at it, most of the capital is risk averse. So clearly people are getting money from some of the more lenient sources that may not be able to extend money to that compliance.
Brilliant. We don't have enough time. I would love to have this conversation, but maybe one last question that we've been asking, especially for the last 3 days. Are Zimbabweans actually entrepreneurial?
Wow. Do you know, when I started this job, I did not expect the level of entrepreneurs, the level of skill and development, the minds we have in this country. I've toured almost all the 10 provinces now. They've got 2 left. I've gone as far as Gwanda.
Like a politician.
Well, we do have 10 provinces. I am a government official towards an urban mentor. But no, like jokes aside, I'm shocked at the ideas I am seeing. It's just mind blowing. We've got guys using our space satellite and accuracy of soil, the soil type and tests. I mean, you've got amazing ideas. Like, you can't get me started. So we do have, and our kids in these institutions are at par, if not better than most of the tertiary university students in Africa. They are smart. They just need someone to believe in them. Like super, super smart.
And Sekai, what do we need to do? If I'm listening to this and I need to get in touch with someone, what can I do?
So if you are an actor in the ecosystem, you can get in touch with the CZI, or you can get in touch with the National Venture Fund and register your interest to participate in this forum. The forum is not a meeting. The forum is an initiative to actually work towards designing our ecosystem intentionally, and as well as begin to inform our policies and our legislation to promote entrepreneurship. So they can get in touch with us.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. That was interesting.
Shout out to our sponsor, as always. Delta, BAT, Kefalos, and Old Michel.
Thank you very much, sponsors. And thank you very much to CZI and to Tina. We're looking forward to this, and hopefully in the next 6 months we can hear the progress that you guys have made.
Yeah, actually, you should come on to the show and talk a little bit more about entrepreneurship.
100%.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
We didn't push back this time around. Next time.
I'll be ready. I'll come prepared. I won't wear a suit.
Okay. You
Thank
look dapper, man.
No, but if it's for pushing back, you need to be wearing the right clothes.
Thank you. Enjoy and have yourself a wonderful Friday. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, Tina. Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks.